Our second speaker today is Sal Dominguez from Santa Paula, California, who will talk to us about California farm labor from the point of view of a farm labor contractor.
Well, good morning. As mentioned, my name is Sal Dominguez. I've been a farm labor contractor for about 10 years, going on my 11th, and a avocado grower for the last 5 years. So we're going to go a little bit about what is required of us in order to become farm labor contractors and things that you should look out for to ensure that you're dealing with a reputable farm labor contractor. There's a lot of us that work hard to work within the rules, and there's a few that kind of play them as to their benefit. One of the first things we need to do if you're trying to become a labor farm contractor is you have to apply to the state of California for a license. The initial application will normally take sometimes as long as 8 months to process. So it's a pretty intense, where they do background research. You have to fill out a multi-page application. You have to provide with the application a workman's compensation insurance proof. You also have to have a bond to ensure through the bond that your wages will be backed up in the event that you don't have the funds to pay them at any one time. And it starts out at $25,000, but once you get above $1 million in payroll, which is very simple to do, you have to then increase it to $75,000. The other thing you need to do is you need to go to an 8-hour continuing education class, and this is something you do every year. And during this whole 8 hours, it's basically different speakers trying to put the fear of God into you, telling you about all the agencies, state, federal, local, approximately 20 some odd agencies that can basically come in and put you out of business. Be it sanitation, worker safety, a variety of people that can be involved in reviewing your process and reviewing what you're doing, and if they are not happy with what you are doing or how you're doing it, they can basically put you out of business. Obviously, you also have to have a federal, since you're employing migrant workers that fall under the MISPA regulations spoken of earlier, you have to have a federal license, which is quite simple to get. You just send in an application, and usually within a 30-day period, the federal is very responsive in that effect. And the other thing you have to do is you have to register with every county that you are doing work in. For example, I work primarily in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, so I have to go to both ag commissioners' offices and register and have a permit from them saying that I've proof of registry. Extra services, well, unfortunately, more and more we're providing less and less as far as extra services. There was a time that housing and transportation were quite a bit more common than they are today. A lot of the farm labor contractors, at least in this area, will not provide housing or transportation because of the liability that we incur when we do these things, especially in transportation. What we tend to do is we tend to tell the employee, this is the job site that you need to report to, be there certain time of the day, and they will then carpool so that you are not involved in what they call the coming and going rule, meaning that if you were to tell them this is where the job site is and then we're going to move to this one midday, then you are responsible via workman's comp from the time the individual leaves the house to the time that he returns to his home. So to try and avoid that, you try and just tell them to report here, and then you take on the responsibility from the moment that they start work, and it ends at the moment that they stop for the day. All these, like I said, there's 20 some odd agencies that will come in and look at you, so everything's highly regulated. I mean, we as farmers know that we have a lot of regulations to comply with, pesticide safety training and all these, teaching them how to use the quad once a year, all these other regulations. But on top of that, the farm labor contractor, for some good reasons, there has been a lot of shady things done in previous years, but for some reasons we are and have been very highly regulated, and that is true today, and it just keeps getting worse. One of the other things that you have to do in order, if you are transporting people, and would be to have your vehicles inspected by the CHP, certified as a farm labor contractor transportation vehicle, which means that you have to have a driver that has attended at least 30 some odd hours of training and has a license to operate basically a bus. Because of these increased regulations, it is rare that farm labor contractors provide a lot of these services. In some remote areas, it makes sense and you have to do that, but for the most part, if you can get away with not doing it, you don't. Some of the things that are reasons for taking our license away, obviously, failure to pay minimum wage. And one of the things that you have to remember is you as growers are ultimately responsible to ensure that everybody that works on your property is getting paid minimum wage or better. So just because you're hiring a labor contractor, you are not isolating yourself from this responsibility. So that is why it is very important to develop a relationship with your labor contractor so that he is providing, so that you know that he is doing the things in an honest way and having your best interests at heart and protecting you by ensuring that they are paying minimum wage or better. And one of the ways that you can do this is you can request from your labor contractor what I call a grower report. My payroll system will kick out a grower report for your ranch that will tell you exactly who worked on it, how many hours they worked, and what their wages were paid. And from that, you can ensure that the employee is getting paid that minimum wage. Not all my growers request it, but it is available. And the ones that don't request it is because they know that it's available. They don't have to have another piece of paperwork to store in their facility. Cash flow requirements. This is a very difficult situation for most of us at the beginning of the season. We've gone through a winter where we're spending our money on equipment repair and trying to keep at least your supervisors employed so that they will be there for the following season. So at the beginning of the year when you're getting underway and you're getting a payroll of $100,000 a week, and a lot of contractors are doing quite a bit more than that, but for my instance, let's say I'm doing $100,000 a week, it is difficult to do that. Now, advances would obviously be very helpful, but I've never had a grower offer to give me an advance. I've had a couple that thought they made too much money and they wanted to give me a check so that they can reduce their tax liability. But packers as well, in the citrus industry, and I apologize in advance for taking a strike at avocado packers, but in the citrus industry, if you get your invoice at a certain time of the week, they will pay you that Friday so that your weekly payroll is helped that way. But avocado packers, for some reason, are not in that habit, and they usually take about a month to pay you. So that can be a little difficult at times. Some other reasons that you can lose your license is obviously if you don't pay your taxes. The federal government does not have a sense of humor about that, so they will definitely come down and shut you down as far as your business goes. Obviously, insurance companies are not going to keep the policy open for you if you're not making your regular payments. And again, this is on a $100,000 payroll. You're looking at maybe $20,000, $30,000 once a month to pay for just workman's comp. It's one of our highest cost of operation. And again, oftentimes, when we, as contractors, we compete with each other and always want to offer the customer the best price possible. But there are those contractors out there that will come in and just give you a price that is just, it should sound ridiculous in its face, but I will tell you that the way they do this is they will have, let's say a contractor has 10 crews. They will report 3 crews to the government, to their workman's comp carriers, to EDD and so forth, and the others get paid cash. And so they're saving themselves anywhere from 20 to 30% of that payroll And so they can come in and either offer a very low price for the services, because if you got $100,000 payroll on that area and you're saving 20 to 30% per week, that is a substantial amount of money that you can play with to give those prices to capture more work. And it's very easy for them to go to the local store where the employees already go to cash their checks, take them an $80,000, $90,000 check from a packing house and say, cash this for me so that I can do payroll to my guys via cash. So this is, again, a reminder of what I said previously. You are responsible to ensure that everything's being done legally. And the best way to do that, again, is to develop a relationship with your contractor, know that he is doing things in your best interest and is able to provide the documentation to prove it. There's, as we all have been going through the gap, I am sure that all of us have heard from the people helping us that if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So, we can say that we are doing everything we are possible and legal, but if you don't have it documented, it didn't happen. Now, the industries that compete with us, as mentioned earlier, construction, we found that during the housing bubble burst that we actually had an influx of very high quality workers come back into agriculture as they lost their housing work. But unfortunately, the housing industry is coming back on, and those workers are going back to that area. So yeah, they're competing with us heavily. Nurseries, and on this I would add the berry industry. We've all seen that the face of agriculture here in this area is changing. Hoop houses are going up everywhere. The raspberries, a very highly labor-intensive business that pays very well. So just the berries, the blueberries and raspberries that we didn't have maybe 5-10 years ago, now are draining a lot of the workforce because they are able to pay a good wage, and we are losing. Restaurants, I would say, a lot of the people that work in restaurants want people that want to work by the hour, and I don't know that really has a great effect on us. And of course, we're dealing with basically 100% immigrant workforce. And the truth of the matter is that these people are not taking jobs that Americans want to do. And that is unfortunately a message that we're not conveying very well to the public. But it is what it is. Benefits to farm workers. Well, if you like to work outside, yeah, it is a benefit. Variety of work sites. I mean, me personally, I love to go to a lot of other ranches that I work on because some of the views are amazing, but obviously the employees have a difficult time enjoying that most of the time. This one, I don't know exactly how it got in there, but if I were to let my employees set the rate, I'd be out of business. The bottom one, $1,000 per week from our workers. I have, especially in avocados, I have several crews that will generate $1,000 per week from their effort. And this is where they're picking 4 or 5. Obviously, having a good volume of product is very helpful, but it is not uncommon. I have several ranchers that this is very possible, and I would say that the average for most of the guys is $600 to $800 on a weekly basis is pretty much the norm, especially in avocados. In citrus, it's a little more difficult, but again, you have people that are interested in working in avocados and people that are interested in working in citrus, and then a lot that want to work hourly. But the guys that really hustle, it is very easy for them to reach these goals. H2A program. A lot was said already about the H2A program. I will share with you some of my experiences with this. A year ago, I started looking into the H2A program because it is my belief that the amnesty program, or whatever you want to call it, legalization program that we all are kind of pushing for, is actually going to be a detriment to us. And I base that on what I saw in 1986 when President Reagan signed the last amnesty program, and a lot of those people just went off into different industries. Factories, construction more heavily. They have the freedom to move, and agriculture, I mean, it's a difficult and hard work to do. I mean, whether you're carrying a 80-pound picking bag or bending over to pick strawberries, it's a difficult job. And a lot of these people, I think, are going to move into. So I've been looking into the H2A program because I believe that will be the only avenue we'll have to ensure that we have workers. So the way it works on the ground, you have to obviously first advertise that you have work and wait for the hordes of Americans that are going to come and apply for picking jobs. When that doesn't happen, then you can go and find employees in Mexico or people that want to be employed in Mexico. And the way you would do this, to be perfectly honest, is you talk to the people you already have here and say, hey, is your cousin, is your uncle, is your brother interested in coming back? And in that sense, we're fortunate because a lot of skilled labor that went back and is no longer able to come back would be interested in coming back under this program. But as I looked into it and as I worked with it, I used a broker, so-called, to legalize these people to come back. And what they have to do is they have to go through a background research, or they have to check their background. Again, we don't want to import Mexican terrorists. You have to provide all kinds of documentations via the Mexican consulate before you can even contract them. When you do contract them, you have to give them a time period under the contract of how long you're going to employ them. Let's say I want to employ them for 10 months. Well, under that contract, I am obligated to provide 70%, or 7 months out of those 10, I have to provide the work before I am released from that contract. The other thing is you have to, and this is where it basically is unworkable for someone like myself. You have to provide them certified housing. And what this means is that the county comes in and looks at the place where you're going to house these people, and basically you have to have it at a level of a 3 to preferably a 4-star hotel kind of amenities. Labor camps are almost non-existent. I mean, we have one here in Oxnard that's widely used, but the problem is it's widely used and pretty much to the limit of capacity. We have a couple in Fillmore, but the gentleman over there is not interested in becoming certified, so therefore it's unusable for this purposes. So the only other alternative you have is to bring 30 guys, you got to have at least a 3,000 square foot house. You have to provide 100 square foot of living space per person. 50% of that has to be bedroom facilities, and the other 50 can be general living area. You have to provide them a place where they can cook their meals, otherwise you have to provide the meals. The meals are workable. The housing is very difficult. I am not going to find 3,000 square foot houses in low income neighborhoods. So, you know, how many affluent neighborhoods want 30 guys living in one house before they start suing you or complaining? Yes, sir.
Has the county been approached to develop a program that would be somewhat more lenient for farmers that have housing on farms?
The housing on farms, again, has to be certified. If you have migrant workers, they're under MISPA, and it's not a county thing, it's a federal thing. So it's MISPA that sets the regulations as to what you can and cannot do with housing especially.
But the county, if it weren't so difficult to deal with the county, it would be possible to provide housing. But like if you bring, I've set up mobile homes on my farm for my permanent workers. I'd like to do more of it, but the cost of doing that is virtually the same as building a new house in terms of the permits and fees, right, and regulations, and that cost is far greater than the mobile home cost, and there are restrictions on the number of mobile homes per parcel. But there has been some conversation within the county about attempting to address this problem. And
Well, I talked to the county about possibly buying, let's say, a 10-acre parcel where I could develop a labor camp. And they really don't want to even talk to me about it. It hasn't been done in such a long time that they're really not interested in even approaching or researching to see if that would be possible. Obviously, to me, part of my solution would be to get the packing houses who have more political power because of their size of employment involved in talking to the county and trying to get at least some area set aside where it could be done. And maybe in conjunction having just a large labor camp, because when you bring an H2A worker over here, you are responsible, one, to transport them here and then transport them back. But while they're here, they're also your responsibility. If they get into trouble, if they go out and have an accident or get into a fight or whatever, you are responsible the whole time they are here. I mean, it's like you're gonna have 30 or 100 children that you gotta look after for a long period of time. So putting them in an area where you can more easily manage that situation, and then you get other organizations that will come after you for abusing or basically enslaving these people while they're here because you're trying to mitigate any possibility of an issue with them. All this cost to bring a person up here to get them certified down in Mexico as a decent human being, it will run you from $1,500 to $2,000 per individual. So that again is something that's workable unless, I would want to bring, let's say, 30 to 100 guys up here, and, doing the math, it gets a little crazy. Even in the housing, if I could find a hotel that would house them for $8 a day, when you got 100 people at $8 a day times a month, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars per month just to housing. So to me right now, the H2A program, the housing is the most difficult thing that you have to somehow solve. The paperwork requirements would be the same that you have to, any employees that you have, the W-4s, the I-9s, you have to pay the payroll taxes, Social Security. One of the things about H2As, they don't have to pay Social Security or income tax. And the wage rate that the gentleman was talking about earlier, the super rate, right now in this county it's $10.22 an hour. So you bring 30 guys and start a crew that's getting $10.22 an hour, and then you got your regular guys that are like, making $9, $10 an hour. They're not going to be too happy that these other guys that don't have to pay taxes, don't have to pay Social Security, are getting these rates, but they are not.
It's worse than you think, because you have to pay domestic workers the same wage you pay H2A workers if they're doing the same job.
So anyway, we all can see how this is, unfortunately, I'm not going to absorb that cost, so my customers would have to, and it gets a bit expensive, but I really do think that at the end of the day, this may be our only option to have workers to do our harvesting. Employees are paid for transportation time to Grove. Well, the only time that I do that is if I tell them this is where the work is, show up at 7, and then when they get there, we find out that the grower put the water on or sprayed. Well, I'm responsible. I have to pay them at least 4 hours for that day if we have to cancel the work. GAP and GHP, good harvesting practices. I'm certified in both as a grower and as a contractor. In fact, I've gone recently through 2 global GAPs, so I'm also certified in those. And like, as a grower, as we all know, we go through all this effort, more as a CYA kind of situation is the way I look at it, but we don't get one more penny for our effort, and contractors don't get one either. It's a requirement that's coming, and we all think it's coming, although right now it's still, whether you are or you're not, it doesn't seem to really affect you either way. It definitely is not a benefit financially to go through the process, but it is something we all have to do. Avocado harvest, well, we know all the time periods. We actually start sometimes before March, but usually around September it trails off. 2 to 3 week notice from growers, well, it would be nice, but it's rarely given. So it would be nice to have, but this is on my wish list. And then obviously we know the peak season that we're going for, especially now with CAC really pushing for that 4th of July market, that hopefully we don't have another foreign country to come in and take over like they did Super Bowl and other things. So the more leeway you give your contractors, say, hey, in 2 weeks or whatever, I'd like to come in and have you pick, it definitely would be of help. Off season, my guys, what I tend to do is I like to employ my supervisors because they're my contact to the rest of the employees. So at my ranch, I'll do winter projects like fixing my ladders, putting up fencing to security. Just try to give my supervisors something to do so that they will be there, so that when we need to make the calls, they can go out and get their cousins and their brothers and their friends from their hometown. And that's what you normally tend to see, is each crew comes from the same hometown and they have a good relationship. So that's what I do to try and keep them occupied in the wintertime. In conclusion, the only thing I would say is that, again, I think the amnesty program is not going to be of benefit to us. Obviously, some will stay, but I think a lot of them will move on. But in all reality, my biggest competition is not so much my other labor contractor friends. It is actually growers. And what I mean by that is that, especially last year, I had growers that were out recruiting their own employees and paying them, let's say $80 per bin, when I was $20, $30 below that in some cases, depending on the size of the tree. And now I get calls to come and help them do their harvesting. And when I go and look at the grove, right outside by the road is this big placard saying, you know, I need employees and I'm paying them this much. Well, there's no way I'm going to bring a crew in there when I'm not at that level. And what it's forced me to do is to raise my prices, because these guys all go to the same little liquor store or the same grocery store to cash their checks, and they have little town meetings there, and they say, well, this is what I'm getting here and this is what I'm getting there. So it's a very common thing. And these guys are getting so sophisticated as well. I mean, they're very intelligent individuals. They're texting, they're on Facebook, they're communicating in every which manner that you think is possible, that you might not think that so-called unskilled workers would be doing, but they are doing it. So these growers that are or bringing in people because they're desperate because they got a large crop and they don't see how they're going to get it off, and they're offering these incentives, it trickles down, and so all of us have to pay more because of this. And like I said before, the guys are making a decent wage. They're earning, you know, $12, $15 an hour with not really working extremely hard. I'm not saying they don't work hard, but I'm saying I have guys that obviously are very good at what they do, and they make more than that. But the competition that I get from growers sometimes is a little disheartening, in that they're pushing the price of the labor to a point where all of us have to, in order to compete. The only option I have is I raise my prices, and I have to go and have more meetings with my guys and tell them, hey, I'm offering you the entire season of work. This grower is going to give you a week and a half to 2 weeks of work, maybe a month, and then you're going to be scrambling to see where you're going to find a home. So with that, I get off my soapbox.
Sal, what do you see the opening level for the season? I know there's a little picking going on now, but going on, say, getting into May and June, either cost per pound or cost per bin, but just
cost per pound.
Yeah.
I used to do some orchards at 9.5 cents a pound. That's gone. I would say 10.5 to 13 cents a pound is more realistic. And a lot of growers, as we go to grower meetings with different packers, they're all which is something I hadn't seen before. Usually packers are very conservative in what they're putting out for general consumption. But I'm hearing that, you know, we're going to have $2 for 60, size 60 avocados, 6 1/4 ounce and up. So a lot of growers are kind of holding back. The only thing that I see pushing right now the harvest is the water issue. I'm doing harvest for growers right now, for example, out in Summerlin, where they're getting 80% of their water cut off. So I have growers that are stumping their trees on their mature trees and hope that they have enough water to maintain their young new plantings. And that's the kind of harvesting I'm doing right now. It's not really the full bore that we saw last year when we had a large crop and people knew that they had to start a little earlier.
Follow on with that, Sal. How high did it get, say, last September, October?
How high?
How high? Cost per pound?
Actually, it was quite good last year because of the volume of fruit. This year it's going to be a little higher but hopefully growers understand that they're also getting a better price, so there'll be a little more understanding of paying a little higher cost per pound. But yeah, last year about 10.5 cents was the norm for what I did.
In the south can be significantly higher than that.
Yes,
The
yes,
rates down
especially
in-
on very large trees. We've had 16 to 18.
Sal, what happened to the transportation assistance that was being provided by vans and whatnot?
Well, in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties and also in the valley, actually in California, there is a county or a government-run van program. But again, as a contractor, I don't get involved with that because I don't want to be perceived as providing the transportation. And basically what it is they got these 16-passenger vans that they provide, and usually one of your employees that has a license will go and apply for this van. If they get it, then they have to charge each employee that rides on the van an amount, and the amount's been going up. And so it's starting to have a little bit of resistance from the employees as to using these. But it's very nice to get a 16 well-maintained by the government passenger van to move some of these people around. So it is very helpful, but it's still going on.
Can you explain or touch on the liability issues for people who work within the industry and deal with labor contractors and deal with growers? Because sometimes growers think that packing houses set prices, and that people who work with packing houses and work with farm labor contractors have a hand in setting prices. And can you just touch on what, say, the liability would be if a person were to get in the middle there and start, trying to do this?
Well, a lot of growers let their field rep get in contact with the harvesting crews and get them and bring them in. And again, everything goes back to you are responsible for anything that occurs or anyone that works on your property. So bringing in the field man is a good way of having, because they have contact with a lot of contractors, and they can try and call the contractors to see who has a crew available at the time period that you are wanting to pick. I can see the benefit to that. I tend to go directly to my growers and develop a relationship directly to them so that I will be doing work for them year after year, hopefully, if I earn it every time that I go, obviously. Whereas with the labor contractor, you may get different crews coming in, and then with the field man. And I would say that pretty much every field man that I deal with is pretty reputable. I mean, I think in the industry, the packing houses have done a really good job of picking high quality people. I think Index is among the best of doing that. But liability-wise to the field man or to the labor, it all comes back to, are you dealing with a reputable contractor that is dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and can he prove that to you? And again, I think that is more with you having a relationship with that individual as opposed to removing yourself even one step further. But I can understand why the field men are very good contact to put you in touch or bringing those crews in. I don't know if that answers your question. But.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking about is when you get involved in, say, moving a crew, like saying, hey, Sal, I'll move these guys for you because you're in Goleta, you're, San Luis, and I'm here. And I don't want to lose that crew.
Right.
So.
I personally would not allow somebody that my insurance is not covering to be hands-on in moving or supervising even my crews. I would rather have that field person tell me where they want and then I will arrange through my staff if I'm not available. And I've got a couple other people, my son and a field boss, that can very easily make those moves. I would highly discourage a field man to get that directly involved in moving crews around. Definitely, I have had field men that have told me, hey, can you pick here for no more than this amount? And sometimes it's doable, oftentimes it's not. I mean, they're looking to get the best price for their grower, obviously, but I'm looking, especially up in Carpinteria, at some of these old growth forests that I'm doing a 32-foot ladder with a 12-foot picking pole, and they want it under 12 cents a pound. Well, it's just not going to happen. These guys are spending half their time climbing and up and down ladders and reaching out for that canopy fruit that's setting out with their sun. So I have had those situations happen, but I'm very open with the field man as to whether I can do that or not.
Keeping with that thought, Sal, it seems that there's a propensity for people to move away from that type of farming where they have very large trees and they're starting to prune them down, excuse me, and keeping them down to more manageable size. Do you anticipate that should lower the cost in that it would be easier to pick? Is that a
No.
direction you see that the growers are moving in?
Most definitely. I tell my guys, for example, when we're going into a young orchard where you're not really needing to use an extension ladder, I actually tell them, you're going to make more money here, so we're going to lower the cost of the price per bin to you. And definitely that will lower the cost. I mean, yes, sir.
What's the tree height that you're talking about?
I would say under 18 feet.
So you would cap it you would cap your trees at 18 feet, and that way, as a grower, I feel I'm going to get a competitive price.
Yes, those are the 10.5 to 12, to 11 cents a pound harvest. You get up to a 24-foot extension ladder, and you're using every little bit of it with a 9-foot picking pole, and then you're going to add a couple cents per pound. So, a couple to more than a couple, depending on.
Are you finding that as far as the pickers are concerned, well, as far as the overall growth pattern is, are they harvesting the same amount of fruit per acre with a shorter, fatter tree as they are with these large, tall trees?
Well, I can only tell you from my personal experience on my ranch. The other thing I've done is I've gone high density. So the fruit I set for this year obviously was on my third leaf, and I'm going to get about 15,000 pounds to the acre right now. So, and that's in October they turn 4. My personal feeling is, and I will defer this to Mr. Jim Lloyd Butler. I've been working on his property for several years, and when we've been pruning his trees, and on an average, I see his crops are better than most that I see around. And obviously, it's not just the pruning. He does everything pretty much right on the money. But I think the pruning is a big part of overall, just lowering your cost of picking. I think you have better sized fruit. You're growing your avocados on younger wood. And overall, I think it's just the benefits are tremendous. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sal.